Hi there, I'm your host McAuley Tucker, and you're listening to The McAuley Tucker Show, the podcast where I sit down with some of the most accomplished and fascinating individuals in the entertainment and business industry. From celebrities to industry leaders, our guests offer unique perspectives and inspiring stories that will educate and inform you. Join me as I sit down with my next guest to cover their humble beginnings, challenges they faced, as well as their accomplishments in life. You are bound to learn something new, so sit back and enjoy the interview. Today on the McAuley Tucker Show, we have a very special guest, Mark DeCarlo. You may recognize Mark as the voice of Hugh Neutron from the very popular Nickelodeon series Jimmy Neutron. He also is a comedian and has many experience in specifically improv. We're very excited to have him on the show and hear more about his life and experiences. Enjoy.
So, how would you say that, your family has, your upbringing, the values and so on, how that's impacted your, the trajectory of your career?
I've been really lucky. I have two younger brothers, and we all live in California now with my parents, and we're close, very close. We play sports together. We hang out. We were all together yesterday for an early Thanksgiving, which is an American holiday down here, McAuley, just in case you don't know. I think it's important. You have to have a team behind you, and I know that, no matter what circumstance would befall me, they would always be there to help and support and be my brothers and sisters-in-laws and nieces and nephews. It's a great family. My wife has a sister, and we have a nephew over there, and we have two nieces and two nephews here in California. So it's a good unit. My parents were pretty supportive of me as I was growing older and getting ready to decide what I wanted to do career-wise. And the only thing that ever really excited me was comedy and performing. And once I realized that could be a job where they paid you to do it, I didn't seriously investigate anything else. I have a communications degree from UCLA, and I could have done advertising or stuff like that. It's just this is the stuff that makes me happy. And I think when, especially young people, and I talk about this when I speak at conferences or schools, the most important thing you can learn when you go to school, go to college, go to high school, is you learn about yourself, learn what makes you happy. And you should try everything: law, medicine, driving a truck, planting things, whatever. And you're either going to like it or you're not. And I would suggest focusing on things exclusively that make you happy will lead to a happy life. Some people decide when they're 7 years old they want to be lawyers. They go to law school, they finish law school, they pass the bar, and then they realize, I hate being a lawyer. And you've wasted $200,000 in 5 years of your life. And then they either go on to be a lawyer and be miserable for 40 years and make a lot of money, or they do something else. So especially 19-year-olds, young folks such as yourself, the most important thing you can do is figure out what you like, what makes you happy, what makes you tick, because anything that you really like is probably going to be the thing that you're also very good at.
Absolutely.
There's a correlation there. And if it's something that you really love and you want to be a part of, every day that you work is not work, at least the way I see it, life is a game and the rules are to enjoy it. Full stop, without hurting other people. So in order to do that, you have to take an inventory of what you enjoy and what you like doing and try things. And when you hate something, that's good too, because now you cross that off your list. I learned very early on, I don't like being on boats. So never going on a cruise. Some people love it. I love flying. Some people are terrified of flying. That's just the way, the way I'm wired. So you want to build up your list of things that you love to do and things that you hate to do. I think that's really, especially a young person's job. Figure out who you are and then pursue it.
You mentioned a lot of wonderful things there. You mentioned, comedy has always kind of been an interest of yours, and clearly it's that's the case. You mentioned at a young age you've enjoyed that, and it's evident You've shared a story quite a bit about you sneaking into this Second City. It's an improv group. You've spoken a lot about that
Yeah.
story, sneaking into there as a teenager. And I also know, as a comedian, you've often spoken about collaboration, and you've spoken about emphasizing that collaboration as a comedian. And improv is quite literally, a collaboration of a group of comedians, typically when it's a group. So I'd love to hear, with this story that you've shared quite a bit, what was it like observing this happening, and how did observing, Second City doing their thing, how has that taught you about collaboration and creative chemistry? And how has that influenced yourself as a comedian, experiencing that for the first time at a young age?
That's a great question. Creative chemistry, that is what I love more than anything else. And when I was in high school, my best friend, Chris Fay, his two older siblings were on the main stage downtown in Chicago. I was out in the suburbs at Bennett Academy in Lisle, and Chris's older brother, Jim, and his older sister, Megan, were performing as paid performers at Second City. It was a alcohol club. So you had to be either 18 or 21 at the time to get in. I don't recall, but we were freshmen in high school. So what are you, 14 years old? But we were able to sneak in because Chris got us in. So we'd sneak in the back way and we'd sit at the rail and we'd watch the shows. And I'd watch hilarious people walk on stage with no idea what they were going to do, take a suggestion from the audience and turn it into 7 minutes of really funny stuff. And we went many times, and every time it was always entertaining. It wasn't always great, but it was always entertaining. And they were getting paid to do that. That was their job. And once I figured that that was a career path, that was something I decided I wanted to do. So I graduated from high school, graduated from UCLA. While I was at UCLA, I started doing stand-up, which I didn't like as much as improv. Stand-up's really difficult, and you're more talking at people. If you're improvising with a group, you're listening and you're acting, and if you're a plumber, you're being a funny plumber. That just appealed to me, and I seemed to be better at that than doing stand-up, straight stand-up. And then when Second City opened out here in California, I was one of the founding cast members, along with Megan Cavanaugh from League of Their Own, and Brad Sherwood and Colin Mockery from The Brad and Colin Show, and Andy Dick and Richard Kind and Andrea Martin, one of the funniest human beings on the planet. It was a great, great opportunity. And I learned the craft, and I learned how to improvise and how to write and how to direct. And all those things have served me well in my professional on-screen acting career. But the real fun, it's like making jazz music. The fun thing is I can go to Hamilton, Ontario, and walk into the Second City Theater there. There'll be six people on stage I've never met before, but I could get on stage with them and do 45 minutes of improv because we all have the same basic training. And there's a few little rules about it, but it's just being present and listening and being available to the other people on stage. Basically the same rules as being successful in life, being present and listening and thinking, and then just reacting. And the collaboration is something you don't get in stand-up. It's a one-person gig typically, and it just wasn't that as appealing to me as the group stuff. Plus, it's
Yeah.
more fun to travel with a group of people than it is to travel by yourself.
Oh, of course. And improv, as you've highlighted here, it's very important. I've often spoken about improvisation in outside of comedy, working in sales, working outside of comedy. Improv is a valuable tool. And as you've mentioned, it's very fascinating. You got to see that happen and learn about it even before you were going to ultimately become a comedian. You were learning about the craft that you soon were going to be involved in for most of your life.
Yeah.
And it's really beautiful. You mentioned going to university. This was really cool. You were actually part of a frat while you were at university. And I was really interested in hearing about how the comedy life and the frat life kind of went back and forth, because there's there's connotations when it comes to the frat life, and then there's the world of the comedy world, the life, and you were learning more about comedy while you were in university. I can from my understanding, I'd love to hear a bit about those two worlds and how they clash.
Um, Girls like guys that are funny. Thus my interest in comedy at a young age. Also, it's easy to talk to strangers if you can improvise and you're not afraid. I mean, you and I are improvising right now. I don't know what you're going to say. You don't know what I'm going to say. The reason we can have a conversation is because you talk, I listen to what you say, I process it, and I respond. And that's all improvisation is. The difference is if you're doing it on stage, instead of responding as yourself, you're responding as whatever character you are in that scene or in that show. But other than that, it's the same. So what you really learn at Second City is the ability to, when someone yells out, left-handed plumber, now everything that you take in and spit back out has to come from the mind of a left-handed plumber, not your own personal mind. So it's in how you add that. I think an analogy would be like a filter on Instagram, right? You take that initial image, but you can put a sepia tone on it. You can crank the saturation, you can change the lighting, you can do all that, which changes the overall appearance of the image, but you're still working with that same nugget of an image. So when you're improvising, you're basically filtering what Mark would say and changing it to whatever the character would say. And that's I mean, that's what a fraternity is. You're socializing, you're hanging out. I was in a fraternity to have fun with my brothers and meet girls and go to dances and do fun stuff. And I learned very early that if you could talk to girls, it was better than if you didn't. So that's what I did, and it served me well.
And that was very interesting. I mean, because like you wouldn't imagine those two worlds kind of clashing together, but I thought that was very.
Every list ever, if you go on Match.com, all these places, the first thing women always say is, "Oh, I want a guy who can make me laugh."
And you're exactly that guy.
On some days, yes. My wife would disagree, but I tell her 80% of the time I'll be funny. The other 20% you just have to deal with.
It's finding that balance, which is important. A time to
Right.
laugh, a time to cry, a time to all that good stuff.
Exactly.
And it wasn't just experiencing Second City that was crazy. You also won a game show. I know you've spoken about this quite a bit as well. It was a Sale of the Century, I believe, if I have that correctly. Significant moment. You've spoken about this quite a bit. I'm curious, more or less, how you personally processed the shift from being, as you've described it before in conversations, flat broke to suddenly having the freedom to pursue your passions. Did it change the way you approached your comedy acting or even your view of success in the long run when this happened? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, my definition of success is never having a job that I hate, never having to go punch a clock and doing something that I don't like. And I've been, in that regard, successful since college. Yeah, I had just graduated from UCLA in January. I went on this game show in March and won over $100,000. I was 20 years old. So I didn't have to go get a job. A lot of my actor friends were working in restaurants or driving or doing day jobs, and then they would have to sneak away and go do their auditions and come back to work and all that stuff. I didn't have that stress. I told my parents, I'm gonna put all this money in the bank and I'm gonna use a little of it to live on for the next 2 years. And if my show business career hasn't taken off in 2 years, then I'll go get a job in advertising. And they were cool with that. And I think partially because I had no stress, I just started booking commercials and jobs almost instantly. Started making a lot of commercials at the time. I just graduated from school and you could make a lot of money in commercials. And because I could walk in to an audition, do my thing and not really care. I didn't need to get hired to pay my rent that month. I don't think I smelled as desperate as maybe some of the other people auditioning for the roles. Um, and producers and directors, I think, interpret that as confidence, which I guess is a facet of what it was. Auditioning is a strange thing. You have your script and you go in and you give your spin on it, knowing that the other 100 people in the room are going to do the exact same material in hopefully a slightly different way. And then you just hope that whoever's buying the talent likes your job the best. So um, I made my peace very early on with rejection and knowing that, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. All I could do every time I went in an audition is do the best job that I could think of, right? If I do 95% or better of what I'm capable of, then whatever happens, happens. And I was able to have that peace of mind because I had money in the bank and I didn't have to, I didn't need to go out and get a job to support myself. And I was living in a house with two other comedian friends of mine. We had a big group of people, good big group of friends. We lived very close to the improv here in Hollywood, so we were there 5 nights a week. We started my improv group, the Frayed Knots, started performing all over town. We had residencies at the three big comedy clubs in town. So I was busy and I was out doing stuff, and the career just kind of took off from that point. But the game show was definitely a big turning point in, probably I would say the biggest happening in my life to that point for sure.
You mentioned advertising. I mean, you have, I believe, have experience in, going into those commercials and so on. I've spoken with several individuals who've done commercials. They've told me that there's families out there that are just like the commercial families. They just do commercials. You can make quite a bit from commercials. And I know you didn't specifically stick within that realm. I'm curious because you mentioned that. What do you think your life would look like now if you hadn't won that game show and specifically stuck within the commercial? I know that's a kind of a big question, a loaded one. How do you think
no, I mean, I think
different?
about that all the time. I don't know. I mean, I may have had a harder time getting work. I may have had to take a day job somewhere. Maybe I could have found a day job that I enjoyed. I think maybe working in advertising would have been satisfying and fun. Maybe engineering, but I wasn't trained for that. I don't know. I mean, I think
That's
it would have been
fair.
a lot harder and a lot more difficult, probably. But I would like to think that my mantra of only doing what makes you happy, uh, I would have stuck to that. I just know too many people who have settled for a job that they hate because they need the money or they want the money or they want more money or they want a company car or whatever. And my experience has shown me that whatever you really, really, really want in life, that's what you're going to get. So if all you really, really want is money, you'll get it, but that's what you'll have. All I
Exactly.
really, really want is happiness and to have an enjoyable daily life. And luckily, that's what I have. I mean,
Absolutely.
how you go about prosecuting that, I think, is different for person to person, and it certainly would have been
Mhm.
uh, frighteningly more difficult if I had not won that show, for sure.
And like, that experience is such a blessing that happened. I mean, and again, it opened so many doors. When it came to after the show, that's when you began to, you mentioned you were living with your friends who were comedians and you were growing in that. Before we go into kind of like the meat of the interview, the conversation and the topic that you
We're
often
still
speak
on
of.
the bread of the sandwich.
We're just on the bread. We're right over here. And then
Got
we've
it.
got
All
the,
right.
then we've got the main topic that you speak about quite a bit.
Okay.
Before Jimmy Neutron, before that show, you were on several other projects. You've got Duckman, Seinfeld, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, all these different unique projects. Each
hmm
project is very unique and very special. But I'd love to know, how did moving between, let's say, an animated series or show and a live action refine your sense of humor, but also help you determine what type of comedian you wanted to be?
It's a good question. I had done My first TV job was the dating comedy show Studs. That was in
Mhm.
91 to 94. So that was before Neutron. And I did a talk show after that. And I did a big game show for the Fox network after that. Uh, and then I think I had done the X show. I had a talk show on the FX network. And then I did Neutron. So I was known more for my on-camera stuff than
Mhm.
cartoons. But Steve Odenkirk and one of his producers, Paul Marshall, saw our comedy group at the Long Beach Comedy Club. We were there every Wednesday night and thought I could be funny for this project that they were working on. And they called me in to audition for it. And it was the dad on Neutron. And the scene I got was reading with the mom. So I called my friend Megan Cavanaugh from Second City. She played Marla Hooch in League of Their Own. She was having a kick-ass movie career at the time. And I said, we should read this together. So we auditioned for it together and they loved us and they hired us both. Um, that was another great opportunity because everyone involved in that show, the writers, the producers, the cast, everybody was triple A plus, and it was a great experience. We got to improvise a lot in the sessions. The scripts were excellent, so not that they needed it, um, but it was. You don't really choose what kind of comedian you are, I don't think. I think certain things are funny and I think certain things aren't funny, and you just kind of lean into that. And if your sensibility matches the public, you get a paycheck. If it doesn't, you're working at a car wash.
And that's a
And you're
great way
the
you can put
but
it.
you're the funniest guy at the car wash.
Yeah, some of the best comedians, like some of the funniest people that I know are not like actively trying to, pursue comedy. And I sit here and I'm like, that friend over there, I think he'd be a great comedian. Or that guy over there, they're everywhere. There's so many people who are hilarious and funny and can, roll around with that. And Jimmy Neutron, you've spoken about this show quite a bit. It's a wonderful show. I grew up watching it. I love it. It was a great project, and you know how great it was. And you've spoken about it quite a bit. There's one question that I wanted to ask you that I have not heard you quite speak about exactly, involving the character of the Hugh. You've described him as lovable, lovable goofball who, despite his quirkiness, clearly loves his son. But I'd
Hmm.
love to hear, if playing this role, if it, for so many years, if it offered you any unexpected insights in the dynamics of being of fatherhood. I know that's kind of looking into something. I know that's kind of looking into something that you might think is just very simple. I voiced a father, but was there anything that challenged you? Maybe perhaps the preconceived notions, or maybe it affirmed your certain aspects of fatherhood that you knew about. I just would love to hear about
Good
that father's.
question.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about that.
You know what, the my whole take on that role, Hugh Neutron. They told me we didn't, you don't even get a picture of the character when you're auditioning for it, but they told me you're the dad of this genius.
Mm.
And I remember thinking, I bet everybody's going to go into this audition and be really smart. Because if you're the dad of the genius has to come from somewhere. The dad will be smart, the kid will be smart. I thought it would be an interesting contrast if he was just an idiot, a lovable, well-meaning boob. Excuse me. And the mom was super smart. So I played it that way in the audition with Megan, and I think they thought that was a good idea. So I think even though Hugh is like a second child in the family, really. Judy runs the house. If there's any problems or trouble, she would be the one to talk to. Um, I think but you know what? I guess in fatherhood, all that matters is that you love your kids and you help them spread their wings and help them fly anywhere they want to fly. So I guess Hugh tried to do that with Jimmy, although Hugh was not leading the way in any way, shape, or form. He was always the last guy in the parade. So I don't know that he is a gold star member of the fatherhood community, but he was a good father. I don't know what Jimmy learned from him. I'm sure he learned a lot more from Jimmy than the other way around. The writer, I'm not a father, I'm an uncle three
Mhm.
times. The writers, I think they all had kids, so the material would be infused with that kind of fatherly insight and care. So I think I soaked it up in that fashion. And you know, you want to just provide a safe place for your kids to grow up and be who they are. And because Jimmy was such an idiosyncratic kid, that was probably a challenge for Hugh and Judy. But I think they learn early on that he's going to do what he's going to do. We just have to keep him alive. That's really the big challenge.
That's fair. And it was a wonderful role, and I really enjoy it. We were watching some episodes a couple nights ago, and I was just like, this was a great role, and you did it amazing. You did it very well. And I was just looking up online, and people are just always praising the role, and it was a great role, and I'm very happy that you took that offer to be a part of this show and
Yeah, me
made it
too. It turned out
as
to be a great gig.
yeah. Well, beyond Jimmy Neutron, you've gone to create your own character. You created your own character, an online character where you've done some content using. It
Hmm.
is the bear character. And so that was a very cool one. I was looking at that quite a bit ago. You've described him as kind of like an egotistical character with kind of like a funny side. Kind of a persona you'd expect on a children's show. But there's a layer,
Right.
however, that hasn't been fully explored: the character's potential for satire. Given his somewhat jaded perspective on fame and show business, have you ever considered using the character to take kind of, I don't know, playful jabs at, I don't know, business and fame and so on and so forth? Like that character in general. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, the character's Boffo the Bear, and I partnered
Yes.
with a big VFX supervisor here in town during the pandemic, and he created a feature film quality animated character that I could do live from this office here, live to air. So I did an hour a day
Wow.
live during Monday through Friday, interviewing celebrities and doing comedy pieces, doing field pieces. I was able to go out driving around as the bear. It was really
Wow.
cutting edge stuff, and it was super, super fun. And we're
Mhm.
developing a couple of different TV projects based on that character and that technology, both for the Bafo character, and we have a couple of UFO alien type projects that we're working on. And the
Okay.
cool thing about that technology is it's interactive. I could be sitting here as the character talking to you, and there's no other technology on the planet that can do it at that quality level, live to air or live to
Wow.
tape. So we're working on some formats with platforms here in town where we can bring that to a streaming audience. And although I do like YouTube because of the live potential and the two-way, it's like old time radio or old time TV in its conversational manner, and it's improvising. Now, instead of improvising as a person, I'm improvising as a cartoon bear, which is even more fun because
Wow.
it's a much, I was talking earlier about the filters that you put on when you're improvising. Going from being Mark to a plumber is a short step compared to going from being Mark to a big blue bear who's a famous show business character. There's a lot more meat on that bone to goof around with. So
Oh
it's
yeah.
been a really fun project, and we're in the middle of developing some other stuff right now.
Very
So keep
exciting.
your eyes peeled.
Of course. Characters. I mean, I'm it's very cool. Like this bear, I was watching and I'm like, this reminds me so much of a character that I've been working on. He's egotistical. He's supposedly like a self-proclaimed Hollywood actor that everybody should know. And I'm kind of taking a spin of the whole Borat thing where you create a character and you kind of like, what's the line between fact or fiction? And it's very fascinating to see you take upon this, technology during COVID, you know, being a comedian, seeing all the different possibilities with comedy. It must be crazy to see how it's growing and expanding. Kind of off my not this is not on my list of questions, but how would you see this technology and just any new advancements in comedy impacting the future of it?
I think I think if you could turn on your TV or open up your phone at 11 o'clock at night and see a cartoon bear interviewing Tom Hanks about what's it like to play Woody, I think people would watch that. with a live studio audience, taking questions from the live studio audience, a person standing up and going, yeah, hey, Cartoon Bear, I have a question for Tom. That's never been possible before. On television, you could fake it on a film, but it takes 9 to 10 months to produce it. It took 9 months to produce a Jimmy Neutron episode. We were the first CG cartoon on cable, I believe. Before that, it was a different style of animation, which was more expensive, took longer. Our type of animation is similar to what we're doing now. It just takes longer. You build a 3D version of Hugh that lives in the computer, and then someone sits at a keyboard and tells it to move around, and that's how you generate the image instead of actually drawing it. And it turns out to be faster and cheaper. Cheaper
Exactly.
because it's faster. So our process is exponentially less expensive because it's instantaneous. And we have a higher level of quality than any other television animation show out there. So I think that the collision of that quality and the instantaneous conversational, improvisational element of that cartoon dealing with human beings, I think that's a game changer that people will respond to, hopefully. So
Yeah.
far, that's been our experience. We did at the LA Comic-Con last year, we did a celebrity talk show where the Bear sat down with famous cartoon voices on stage and interviewed them. And what people saw, if they were looking at the stage, was me in a mocap suit sitting next to Phil Lamar. And if they looked up at the screen, they saw Phil Lamar talking to a big blue bear.
Wow.
And
That's
it blew
so
people's
crazy.
minds. Yeah, it
Wow.
was pretty cool.
And like it's so cool like to see, as you mentioned, Jimmy Neutron, one of the first kind of completely, of its kind
I
on.
believe it was the first. I could be wrong, but
Yeah.
if it wasn't the first, it was one of the first.
And then you have what you're doing now, which is groundbreaking. Two very special projects that you have been a
Yeah.
part of that are very special. Beyond comedy, kind of wrapping up here, beyond comedy, you have shared your interest of other wonderful things. Outside of our careers, we have our interests. For me, I love collecting records. I like going to the record store and finding weird music. I love going down rabbit holes, discovering movies, TV shows I've never heard of before, even before my time. For you, you enjoy hockey. I mean, you really enjoy hockey. You enjoy sports, I believe.
Don't you? I mean, you a forward or defenseman? You
Oh,
play hockey at all?
I don't play hockey, but I was a goalie in my
That was
homeschool
going to
group's
be
hockey years ago when I was in homeschool group.
that.
Goalie.
Now that is a personality. Goalies are weird. Homeschoolers are weird. So maybe those
Yeah.
two cancel out, and that's why you're such a spectacular person now.
I appreciate. Yeah, no, I'm a bigger
A
guy, so I'm like
homeschool goalie.
a
There's a
homeschool
character.
goalie. Yeah,
Yeah,
you could do so much with that. There's
you
characters
could.
everywhere. There's
Yes,
characters everywhere.
exactly.
This is kind of going
Well, why
off
did you
script.
quit, McAuley?
Why
Why'd
did
you
I
stop
quit?
playing?
I never got accepted in on a team. I've never got part of a team before, and that's one of the sad things about my life. I've always wanted to make it on a team, a sports team, but never did.
Well, don't
Um,
they have? I mean, I live in Southern California, and we have pickup hockey all over the place. You can't just go to a rink and
that's
play with guys at 10 o'clock at night.
that's fair. I mean, there is a local hockey team here. I just don't know how
Of
to
course,
skate.
there is, McCall. You live in Canada.
That's so true. I mean, I don't know how to skate. I could learn. I
Well,
could learn.
yeah, not being able to skate and goalie's the most difficult position. And
It's
you have
very
guys
fair.
firing hard rubber at you. Go play D, go skate out, go practice skating for 2 months, and you'll be fine. It's in
Hmm.
your blood.
That's
It's
so
in your
true. It
blood. You're a
is.
Canadian.
I am
It's
a
in the
Canadian.
water. We
I'm gonna
put
go do that.
fluoride in our water. They put Zamboni ice in your water.
That's so true. Oh my goodness. But no, like you said, yeah, this is kind of sidetracking. There's characters everywhere. Do you like just walk around and you do life and you're like, that's a cool character. That's an awesome character. I do that all the time. And I'm not a
Yeah.
comedian, but what's that like for you? Walking around as a comedian like that. That's what I like
I
to
listen.
do.
I mean, I listen for voices. I love going to airports or malls or just walking around in public, and you see weird, interesting, offbeat people. And
Yeah.
I talk to them. Most people don't talk to strangers. I love talking to strangers. and you meet a lot of interesting, cool people that way.
You do.
Um, and you know, the material's got to come from somewhere. The Hugh Neutron voice, I was just making fun of one of my friends who happened to be one of the producers on the show. He talks like that in real life. So you know, I
Wow.
ginked it up a little bit, but it's basically my friend Paul. That's how he talks. He
Oh my
skips from
goodness.
one idea to another very quickly and just really makes that noise a lot. And um, you know, I stole it from him.
Kind of going back on track here, you have so many interests. I mean, you collect memorabilia, hockey, you got sports involved, you love food. How would you see the parallels between your hobbies and your interests? I ask that all the time with people who I know have fascinating interests. If there's any parallels with your interests and your hobbies and your career.
Um, I suppose so. I mean, like I said at the outset, I focus on things that I enjoy and make me happy. And when I was doing my show on the Travel Channel, I got to travel to 500 different cities and meet 500 mom and pop chefs. You know, we went to
Wow.
little small restaurants and cafes and uh, rest bars all over the place and met a lot of really interesting, cool people who were super passionate about whatever their regional food was or their magical drink that they made. And it was really enlightening and interesting. And the one common thread that I found amongst all the happy people I've met is that they're working at something they enjoy.
Mm,
I mean, um, the daily day grind of being an actor isn't great. There's a lot of rejection. There's a lot of rehearsing. There's a lot of auditioning that all amounts to nothing. You know, you audition 100 times to get one job, but that's the worst part of my job. When I'm actually doing my job, it's a blast. It's goofing off. People say it all the time. You pay us for everything but the work. You pay us for the training, for the practice, for the going out 5 nights a week practicing your comedy, showing up and doing it on a set in front of a bunch of cameras. That's the fun part.
it
So as
is.
long as you keep that in balance, um, things work out. And I think life can be extremely complicated, but you can also simplify it. And the way I choose to simplify it is by sampling everything. If I like it, I do it more. If I don't like it, I never do it again.
So
And if
true.
you know, you have X amount of hours in your life until you die. So the less time you spend doing something that you don't enjoy, the better off you're going to be.